On Thursday, July the 10th, 2014, I presented the Stoltzfus story to 7 Amish late teenagers and the painters Ephraim Stoltzfus and son Sylvan at the Stoltzfus House. Their interest inspired me greatly, and I hope you will share with them the same level of interest through this story. Merle Stoltzfus and David George led an effort to find a tagline that would speak for the project. This is what they recommended and what the committee adopted, inspiring through the Stoltzfus story. The Stoltzfus story, of course, begins with our ancestor, Nicholas Stoltzfus. And this is the essence of what he presented to the magistrate when he wanted to be Amish and marry an Amish girl. He said, I had the opportunity to be among that kind of people and got used to them and was among them and had opportunity to work, yes, and to even marry among them was my decision. So he made a big choice at that time to join the Amish. He came from a line of Stoltzfuses. His father, Christoph Stoltzfus, died when Nicholas was 4 years old. His mother remarried Daniel Belair, and they got over into Zweibrücken, where there is a group of Amish. And that's where Nicholas grew up then, with Amish around him, and he found work among them. His grandfather, Christoph Gottlieb Stoltzfus, and his grandmother, Anna Margrethe Schwimmer, were among the ancestors, and Christoph was a Lutheran minister. His father also was a Lutheran minister, John Adam Stoltzfus. Their ancestor, Paul Kurtz, is the first one that we have identified as being in the line. Stelzenfuss resembles or means Stiltzfus. So whoever thinks that we came because of Proudfoot, this corrects that. It's Stiltzfus. And somehow wooden leg or stilts or something was associated with the family early on, and they took on the surname Stoltzfus. What we want to see is how the Stoltzfus family and the Smucker became ingrained among the Amish. We want to see how the Stoltzfus House functioned for the family, and we want to see how we know it is the Stoltzfus House, how it is that we came to preserve it. And then there's the leader connection. What can this mean for posterity? This diagram, this list, shows the ingrainment among the Amish. This is a young Amish man, about 22 years old. His great-grandparents, all of us have 16 great-grandparents, and of his 16 great-great-grandparents, 10 of them traced back to Nicholas, either through the Smuckers, which would have been through Barbara Stoltzfus, Nicholas's daughter, married to John Smucker, or through Christian, the Stoltzfuses. So 10 of those have a descendancy name from Nicholas Stoltzfus, and that shows you there was a great they came into the Amish family very heavily. Here's where the Amish families lived that they would have become acquainted with when they came to Berks County. This is a map of Berks County. The upper circle is where Charlottesville is and Jalapa. Charlottesville is the home of the Hostettlers who were massacred, and Jalapa is the home of Jacob Hertzler, who was sent over here to be the Amish bishop. The next one down is the Irish Creek Valley in Center County, and that valley is very interesting because it was almost totally Amish for a period of time during the 1700s. The Bylers were there, and a number of other names of Amish families that moved on west. The lower one is the one where the Stoltzfus family settled among the Cumru Township group. And here was John Gerber and Samuel King or Koenig, and Christian Miller was there, and a number of people that the Stoltzfuses would have been real close to. There were Kurtzes there too. And they came among these 70 families, and I'm quite certain that they would have sung the lead song over in Zweibrücken, and when they came here, they felt that common bond of singing their songs from the songbook. This is the Tulpehocken Creek that they would have settled along. And Chris Stoltzfus had that trailer, he and his wife Mary, and they did wonders to get us established in preserving the house. And he found this rock and set it up as a turtle, symbolic of the Indian name for turtle. This is the entrance to the house that had been threatened at least twice. The first time that it was threatened was when Henry Janssen, for the textile machine company, was buying up the land along the Tulpehocken. And in this area, there were a lot of shanty-type houses. He didn't want a shanty town, so he told his men, tear down all the houses, but let this one stand. He told them that this was the first house built along the Tulpehocken. Then later on, and I'll tell you about that when we get to Governor Leader, it was preserved one other time when it was threatened. This is the place where we can go through, a door we can go through, and we can be confident that it's the same door that Nicholas Christian, his son Christian, and his daughter, his wife, who probably was Anna, his daughter Barbara, and her husband John Smucker, and Magdalena, they would have gone through that. So we can go through a house, through a door to the house, which they would have also used. Now, this is the way the house looked in 1997. And we were there with a bus load of people on a tour of the heritage homes in Berks County, and they insisted that we find a way to preserve that house. That house had not always been called the Stoltzfus House. There was another house that they had gone to before 1976. After the research by Isaac Mast, which showed the different owners of this house, and clearly showed that in 1770 and 1771, the Stoltzfuses had purchased from Thomas Youngman these tracts of land. And it was in the Stoltzfus Smucker family until Solomon King in 1804 sold it to Daniel Meyer. Solomon King was married to a daughter of John Smucker. And there's a big story about how the Smuckers and the Stoltzfuses related to each other with these various properties. This is about the time that the switch was made from going to the previous house that was thought to be the Stoltzfus House to this one, which was documented. And here you see Isaac Mast with my father, Christian Kurtz. Christian Kurtz was involved in the first bus tour of the Heritages in 1959, and there's been a bus tour of the Heritage almost every year since then. It's been a great experience. And then from my father's diary in 1976, he shows where a group of them went to Berks County. Amos Hoover was their driver, and that was the first year that they went to this Stoltzfus House on their tour. The question was raised, how do we know that that house was there in the early days? This is the docket prepared for the Union Canal that shows where the Stoltzfus House is. And there you see in the middle it says the Nicholas Stoltzfus House on the right and the barn on the left. Those are the notations at the spot. This is another one at about the same time period for the purpose of getting the approval to build this road. And you'll see where it says Thomas Youngman. The writing that goes with this document, with this map, talks about the road going by the home of Thomas Youngman. When we had access to the house in the year 2000 to preserve it, the interest was primarily from the Peckway Bruderschaft Library people. And the agreement that was reached to preserve that house was between the Peckway Bruderschaft Library, the Tri-County Heritage Society, and the Leader family. George Leader had developed the country meadows next door, and when we finally were able to work with the agent for the Tulpehocken Limited to preserve the house, he wanted to consult with the Leaders about the property because they had been wanting it for many years. And so we met with him, a number of Amish, and he promised them that he would not sell that property, that 1.5 acres, without the agreement to allow the house to be preserved. Then in 2005, the committee became incorporated, and we have the sign on the right. And this is how the house and the barn look today. And as I mentioned at the beginning, Ephraim Stoltzfus and his son Sylvan repainted the house, and this picture was taken before it was repainted. So it'll be interesting to see the comparison when we get it all finished. It's pretty well finished now. You may be interested to know where the Stoltzfus House is located. If you take Route 222 to Reading, and then you make a turn to go to Allentown, just as you circle those ramps, you'll have the house on the right. Sometimes it's visible, depends which ramp you're on, and depends on how many leaves are on the trees. There also is the barn that's more visible now. And there you can see the house in that little triangle on the right. The Country Meadows is on the left. The house is that little building in the triangle on the right. And that's where it's located. You can see the ramps that go by it. Now you'll see that green spot in the middle of this one. And here we credit Jack Palmer. And I need to tell you that Jack Palmer had a unique interest in the Stoltzfus House and photographed the progress from the very beginning, and has a separate DVD that is detailed with regard to his documentation. He was interested in the Stoltzfus House through Abner Byler, the Amish historian who died in the year 2002, and who was very active as we got started with the preservation. So this was the connection that he had to the Stoltzfus House as we were preserving it. On the left end, the lower end there of that green area is where the Sears building is now. And in the middle, just about where that red spot is on the white area, is where the farmers market is in Wyomissing. And we haven't detailed it, but we're quite certain that the parking lot is built on land that Nicholas and Christian would have owned. Well, if you go to the Wyomissing farmers market now, you'll find most of the people in there have a descendancy from Nicholas. That's kind of an amazing connection. That's the farmers market, and that's the parking lot. Jack Palmer outlined for us some of the features of living in the Stoltzfus House. The room to the right, lower, would have been their living work area. The small room above that would have been where the parents slept, and the long kitchen there. When they lived there, we have evidence that it would have been a one-story house. The children would have gone up to the attic to sleep, most likely. And here you'll see the fireplace in the corner now, and you'll see the condition that the house was in when we began to preserve it. And here you can see the effects of the preservation in the kitchen. There, Carol Kissinger, as she, for many years, would prepare something at auction time in the fireplace. This is the front room. And you'll see the boarded up bit. Most of the windows were destroyed in part or else completely, and they had to be replaced. And that was one of the first jobs that of preservation that occurred. Today, you can see the windows, you can see the use of the room, and that front room is where we are putting our things now that tell the story. When we get the barn finished, the upstairs of the barn will be the heritage room, and that'll be the place to go to get the story. Now, I want you to notice that green book that the gentleman on the right is holding. That is the book that first disclosed to us the story of Nicholas Stoltzfus. It was done by the historian Levi Stoltzfus, who died about 1990, and he had done a tremendous amount of searching to document Amish living in Berks County. He published this book, The Revealed Life of Nicholas Stoltzfus, and it is available from Mastoff Bookstore. It has a tremendous amount of valuable information and puts you right in touch with the with Nicholas in his early days. This is the kind of wood that was used to build the house originally. No saw, just split wood, split lath. Going upstairs looked kind of old and worn out. And the front room upstairs, similar to the lower room, had a lot of need for repaired windows and so on. And when the windows were repaired, it was just brilliant. I want to tell you that Lamar Mast from Mastoff and his father Horace did all the work on restoring those windows. And Sam Stoltzfus from the Keystone Wood Specialties towards Lancaster on 340, he supplied the wood. Samples were taken to his business. He scanned them into the with a computer into his lathes, and then he put out all the wood. So the restoration of the windows cost us nothing. It was donated by Horace and his father, the labor, and the wood was donated by Sam Stoltzfus. And that was a real help to getting things going. Going to the attic, and the chimney was one of the first things we had to repair. Now you can see how we got to thinking of it as a one-story house. There you can see where the window was moved up from the lower level. You can see the roof line of the one-story building. And there was other evidence besides that wall that made it clear that it was a one-story building at one time. We don't know exactly when the second story was added, probably sometime around 1840, but we don't know for sure. No dates have shown up that clearly define that. When they added the second story, they took the joist and tied them into the rafters, which is unusual. If you ever see a house built the same way or see that done, I'd like to know about it. Not many people have come up with the idea, and we don't know exactly why they would have done it that way. but it does make for a little slant in the bedrooms upstairs. The joists are numbered, and it's pretty clear they were used somewhere else, maybe when it was a one-story building, but they were used somewhere else, and they kept them in the same order when they placed them there. This is the basement outline. You'll see the wall in the center went through the whole basement at first. When the Stoltzfuses lived there, we're pretty sure they would have had to go in the cellar steps from the outside. And that's where they would have kept their vegetables and things. But somewhere along the line, somebody excavated the quarter, the lower left quarter, and put in steps to the upstairs. They reinforced the foundation. But we didn't know about that corner in the back. It had never been excavated. Chris Stoltzfus sweat by knocking out those bricks so we could see back there and try to get a better idea about this wall to the right there. That wall doesn't support anything right now. And so what was it there for in that way? So when we looked closely at the wall from the back, it gave pretty clear evidence that at one time there was a center fireplace on that wall. And that's the repaired stairway cellar steps from the outside. This is the outline of the house as depicted by Jack Palmer when there would have been a central fireplace. The Stube is where they did most of their living and their work, and the Kummer is where the parents would have slept. The Kuchen, of course, would have been where they dealt with their food, and the steps going up to the attic would have been for the children where they lived. And Jack went so far as to outline for us on the computer what you would have seen if you would have come when the Stoltzfuses lived there, something of a pattern like that. And of course that pump was something that was donated and installed, and there's a nice well there worth studying. Just an amazing way they dug it out. Now there's an interesting view of the house back in 1982. In 1982, there were 3 pictures like this that appeared in the Reading newspapers. And the only reason they were there was they had to like a headline talking about a peaceful place. The family that lived there from about 1960 to 1988 was the Schlegel family. And we meet a lot of people in Berks County that played with the Schlegel children, and one of the Schlegel children comes regularly to our events. They had a great time living there, and the mother, I looked her up after we started preserving, and I wanted to hear her story, and she was living in Reading, and she almost cried. She said it was so nice when we lived there. And life was so good, but she said when we had to move away, there was nothing went right anymore. Well, the day that the family buried their mother, they called and wondered if they could come back after they buried their mother and see the house. So here they are back at the house, and we had a great time together talking about things. They left in 1988, and that's when the development plans for the area were going pretty strong. There is Governor Leader. Now, I want to tell you that Governor Leader called his excavator, Michael Algar, one day and said, "Michael, I have a demolition permit for that house. I want you to tear it down." So, Michael was thinking about how he could do it, but he got another call from Governor Leader saying, "Don't do it now. Wait till I call you back." Well, I started to wonder about this, and I asked his son Michael, who runs Country Meadows now. I said, "Michael, what would have gone on there that he would have had an attitude, the idea of demolishing it, and now he's been supporting it?" He said that it came to his attention that that house was of significance to the Amish, so he did not want to have it torn down. In fact, he became an important part of being able to preserve it, and we are so grateful for that. He died a little over a year ago, and when the youth, those 7 Amish boys were there last Thursday, I asked them, what do they owe Governor Leader? And they said they don't owe him anything. And then I asked them how many of them went to the vocational school, and they all had. How many of you know that your grandfathers went to prison because they wouldn't send their sons and daughters to the public school? And they knew about that. And then I discovered that they did not know the connection between their vocational school and Governor Leader. When he was governor in the 50s, that was his main goal, it seemed, to set up an educational system that would no longer require Amish to use the public school and still have a good educational plan for them. And so that's what's been operating lately, and that has meant so much to the development of the Amish community in Pennsylvania. And there you'll see Governor Leader with the white hair and his wife with white hair, Mary Jane, at one of our auctions. That was in the year 2008. She died a year or two after that, and he died just last year. But they came to almost every event that we had and donated a lot to the development of the Stoltzfus House and the building of the barn. We've had a number of reunions, and this is the Allgaier reunion. It was held a year ago. They put up a tent, they brought food, and they just had a great time there, maybe 150 people. And this is Michael Allgaier on the left, who organized that. He's the excavator, and he's a good friend of ours. He does excavating as a donation for us. This is another part of the Stoltzfus story. Last January, my brother Calvin and his wife Esther May, my wife Lydia, went to Knoxville, Tennessee, and met with Bob Scott. He's a descendant of Tennessee John. Tennessee John, when he was 67 years old, moved from Millwood area down to Knoxville, Tennessee. And that is a big story, and we're going to be celebrating that on August the 2nd this year. This is the memorial for Tennessee John. There's Bob Scott, myself, and my brother Calvin. The graveyard behind there that many from Lancaster County area went down to help keep that cemetery in the past. And these are some of the artifacts that Bob Scott's sister brought to a restaurant when we came down through Tampa. And she had a number of things from this Tennessee John family that she was showing to us. She was planning to come to the reunion, but had a heart problem and died about a month later that we were there to visit. So we're very sad about that. Here's another Stoltzfus story. This is Alberta Brinkman. When she was 90 years old, she invited friends to come to the Stoltzfus restaurant in Intercourse and celebrate her 90th birthday. Merle Stoltzfus, who's been involved planning our barn and planning the raising the funds for the continuation. He's there, and she's signing the permit to build the barn. And she raised over $10,000, which was just about the amount that David Esch needed in order to go ahead putting up the structure of the barn. And so that was very important to us. She's still living. She's not able to see. She's in Elmira, Kansas, and very, very interested in the story. In 1908, we knew we were going to build the barn, so we started a groundbreaking event, mostly ceremonial at this point. And in '71, then we had the ability to start this structure, and here is Dave Esch looking at the plans. And you can see the type of structure that the barn is. The basement is for an apartment for people to live in, to help the project along, take care of the property and so on. Okay, this is the upstairs of the barn now, and you can see that there's going to be room for a heritage room. That's what we want to have. We want to have a lot of opportunity to get the stories that I've been telling about, whether it's the family that Nicholas came from, his European experience, or whether it's his experience among the other Amish in Berks County, or whether it's the Leader family's interest in the Amish and supporting them, or it may include stories of people that have done different things in our time as descendants of Nicholas. And it should be a most interesting place. We hope that you'll be able to go there and trace your ancestry within the Stoltzfus clan. This is why we exist. The Nicholas Stoltzfus House Committee's mission statement: to preserve the history of the early Anabaptists through the restoration of one of the only remaining structures left from the early settlement in Berks County, namely the Stoltzfus House, which was occupied by Nicholas Stoltzfus, whose roots reach into approximately 98% of the Lancaster County Amish and their descendants. The Stoltzfus House and other artifacts of the Stoltzfus family exist, being restored and preserved to remember the example of their lives lived with an humble attitude of obedience, forgiveness, and willingness to share and help others in need, all to the glory and honor of our Lord Jesus Christ. And I would like to emphasize again, Nicholas made a decision when he joined the Amish. And we don't know the extent to which this made a big difference in his life to follow Christ in that way. But his son became an Amish bishop. And a recent report of the different generations since then indicate that there's been a strong Stoltzfus ministerial leadership among the Amish. So something took place that laid the groundwork for future generations, and that is contained here in our mission statement. So I hope you will ask questions and look into and come and see the house and be a part of the ongoing inspiration that we believe the Nicholas Stoltzfus, the Stoltzfus story can have for many. For no other foundation can any man lay than is laid, Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 3:11.